Hey there, my name is Dr. Barbara Woods, and we are going to talk about the first step in the intergenerational resilience method, which is improving regulation in the family. So I'm going to get my screen ready to share the slides, and here we go. So we will do a brief review of the intergenerational resilience method. So this is a collection of interventions that are organized to create an efficient and effective framework or system that addresses the impacts of intergenerational trauma across generations. So it's not an intervention for just the young people in the family, not an intervention for just the parents. It's a system that treats the whole family through a course of interventions. And we want them to be efficient and effective. We want them effective because that's what we want therapy to be. But we also want them to be very efficient because a lot of people who have experienced intergenerational trauma, they've had difficulties with chronic disempowerment where they just don't feel like they can get ahead. They've had generations of impacts that they need quick wins and they need to move through the interventions relatively quickly so that they can start to make progress, build momentum, and build their confidence. So this is basically the method. There's 4 main pillars or components. They're improving regulation, earn secure attachment. So we want to increase the strategies of earn secure attachment where there's a lot of good co-regulation. There's not a lot of anxiety in the relationship or shutdown. We want to support development because of the impacts of intergenerational trauma. They significantly impact the development of a child or a teen. So in a family, you'll have the child or teen that was impacted by intergenerational trauma, but the parent may have also been impacted in their own development as a child, because that's really how intergenerational trauma is transmitted. So then we want to also build connection and harness the resilience of the previous generations, because if they've survived some of the things that families have had to go through, there's resilience in the background. Even in the most chaotic family, there is evidence of resilience. So we're going to do a brief review of these 4 pillars. So improving regulation, we want to regulate the family nervous system by first increasing the parent's autonomic regulation. And this will help. This is what we're going to talk about in depth today. And this is what helps improve attachment, earn security, the felt sense of safety and stabilization of the family system and co-regulation. So we're going to do a deeper dive into that today. The second pillar is earn secure attachment. So we want to improve the attachment between parent and child because we want these intergenerational impacts to stop and not be continually transmitted into other generations. And we want to heal them in the current generations that we're working with. We want to support development because the intergenerational trauma impacts the development. There's basically developmental trauma for a child, and the parent has likely also experienced developmental trauma as a child. So we want to reduce those impacts so that the development goes back on track and we kind of take care of all those impacts that have been there before so that they can move through developmental stages and tasks in a positive way and not have those impacts that create difficulties and problems later on. Building connection and resilience. So we want the family members to be connected within the family system itself, but we also want them to be connected to previous generations because these generations have things that are spots of resilience that if the family can harness these and acknowledge the path or the journey that the family has gone through, it lessens the impact or the hold that it has on the family. So we really are looking to harness those previous generations and find the strengths that have come through and carried the family through to the current generation. And we want to build that intergenerational resilience. So if we skip any of those steps, those 4 pillars, we will not get the impacts that we need. And intergenerational trauma is extremely complex by nature. You're dealing with multiple generations, historical generational trauma. So it's a very complex situation. It also impacts so much of family system, parenting, child development. So it's a really complex thing to treat. So we need all 4 of these pillars, because if we take one out, we're going to miss a really necessary component and one of the foundational things that we need to treat intergenerational trauma. So if we look here on improve regulation and earn secure attachment, if we only focus on regulation and attachment, we're going to miss development and connection. So those developmental impacts will continue to be there, and the connection to previous generations and building that family resilience, it just won't be there. If you are only going to do 2 or only have the approval, the time to do 2, these are the 2 that you'd want to do, because these are the regulation and attachment are the huge foundation for treating intergenerational trauma. So if we only work on attachment and the developmental tasks, we're going to miss out on regulation and connection. Missing out on regulation is going to make everything else harder. The attachment's going to be very difficult, and it's going to be really difficult to connect within the family and with the previous generations to build that family resilience. If we only work on development and connection in that family resilience, that's missing this huge foundation of regulation and attachment. So that's going to be like really difficult to get a lot of improvement if we only focus on development and connection. So if we only focus on connection and regulation, we're going to miss attachment. We may get a little bit of improvements through better regulation in the family, but we're not going to get the deeper, healthier, secure attachment that we're trying to offer families. And we're also not going to address the developmental impacts of what the child has experienced and what the parent may have experienced in their own development as a child and teen. So let's get into improving regulation. So there's several goals in this step 1 of the intergenerational resilience method, and they're all based on the autonomic regulation within the parent and then within the child. So if you're unfamiliar with what autonomic means, it's part of the nervous system that controls your fight, flight, freeze, connection, and safety states, and it really impacts. It's the foundation of therapy. It's the foundation of most of our interventions, and it's also really the foundation of treating intergenerational trauma. So the first goal is obviously to support the establishment of the therapy relationship, because this therapy relationship is going to offer co-regulation to the parent and the child and teen. And it's going to really increase their experience of felt safety with the safe adult that they can connect with. So that therapeutic relationship is really important, as it is in any therapy. So then after that, we want to support the parent's regulation, because the parent really provides a container for the children and teens in the family for their regulation, and it helps them with co-regulation. It helps them develop better autonomic flexibility, or being able to get in these different states and kind of flow between them without getting stuck. So when the parent is better regulated, there's an increase in the felt safety in the family. And that felt safety is the experience of being connected and feeling safe in a relationship. And it's a really deep kind of right brain experience that people may not be able to put words to them, but they kind of know when they feel it. And the reason this is so important is this is really part of attachment, and it's part of co-regulation as well. So these are all building blocks that all need to be there. Felt safety can also be highly triggering for some people who've never felt it. So if you have a family that has had generations and generations of trauma, that the family's always kind of been in chaos, the attachments aren't very healthy, that experience of felt safety can be very uncomfortable and very triggering. So we want to be careful and watch for that and offer small experiences of it so that they can kind of acclimate to it and adjust and experience it in a non-threatening way. So as we're increasing that felt safety, we also want to increase the co-regulation skills of both the parent and the child. Like, we don't want the child being responsible for the parent's regulation, but children can really dysregulate parents. They can have really annoying behaviors. They can do annoying things on purpose. And if we don't get this co-regulation, both from parent to child and child to parent, in a healthier, more supportive way of interacting, it will create more chaos and stress in the family. So we really want good co-regulation skills. We may need to directly teach these because these are things that we learn through experience in relationships. And if somebody has come from a family that has had difficulties with attachment, they may not have these skills because they never experienced it themselves, not because they can't do it or there's something wrong with them. They just have never experienced it themselves. So the last goal is we really want to decrease the reactivity in a family. So basically, this means we want more time between when something happens and when somebody reacts. So the more time they have between those two, the more flexibility they have and the more depth of strategies that they can use or solutions they can find. So when there's a lot of reactivity, something happens and there's a quick reaction, and usually that reaction probably isn't the most supportive of attachment, connection, safety. So we really want to decrease that reactivity in the overall family. We want to decrease it in the parent so that the child gets a sense of felt safety and attachment can flourish. And we also want the child to have less reactivity so they're not triggering the parent and they have greater coping mechanisms and self-regulation in order to have those skills and strategies spread to other areas like school, friends, all of those things. So the first thing we're going to do is work on like co-regulation with the therapist. We're going to increase the parent's experience of co-regulation and safety through the therapy relationship. So what this does is it helps build greater autonomic resilience. And that means that between safety and connection, fight and flight, and freeze responses, there's a more fluid ability to move between these states and not get stuck. So not getting stuck means you can get angry and come back out of it and kind of regulate and get back to safety. You can have a shutdown reaction where you just can't deal with something, but then you can kind of work back to safety and connection. So we want that flexibility. No one state is better than another. We have them because they're adaptive and we need them. These are what helps us with survival. But the difficulty becomes when we get stuck in these and we don't have the resilience to move between them. So this step is the reason that polyvagal interventions are critical for treating intergenerational trauma, because we have to have that autonomic resilience in order to support co-regulation, felt safety, and attachment. So as the parent experiences co-regulation with the therapist, we also want to increase the co-regulation that the parent has with the child. So this is how we do this, and how it's almost like reparenting, like we're not stepping into a parent role, but we're giving a relational experience that helps with that co-regulation so that they have a felt sense of that. They have that experiential base to work from when they're working with their offering co-regulation to their child. So the improved co-regulation in the parent-child relationship, this is where we build that felt sense of safety in the attachment in the relationship as well. So the third step is to increase safety and stabilization, and this happens through co-regulation. As the co-regulation improves, there's more felt safety because it becomes more predictable. The parent becomes a person that the child or teen can turn toward in order to kind of help them regulate. So we want this felt sense of safety for each individual family member, but we also want it within the family system too. So we want all people in the family to have a sense of safety, to have a healthy, connected family. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to like have great experiences. There's still going to be arguments, there's still going to be fights, and that's okay. But we want people to know that they're secure enough to have those within a family system, and it's not going to fall apart. So that's that sense of safety and security. So when there's greater felt sense of safety, the reactivity decreases. So there's more time between when something happens and when somebody reacts. So they have a wider range of options of how to cope and deal with it. There's less defensiveness. So you'll see less people reacting really quickly and harshly, and maybe those fight and flight responses. And you'll also see less shutdown between family members. So there will actually be greater connection between family members. And this is, again, the foundation for secure attachment. So number 4, we want to improve attachment and behavior. So with greater co-regulation, safety, and stabilization, those secure attachment strategies begin to develop and they get stronger. And this is really the goal of working with autonomic regulation to build that attachment. So what you'll see when there's improved regulation, there's co-regulation, there's safety, there's stabilization, and there's secure attachments, the behavioral disruptions in the teens and children, they decrease because those behavioral disruptions are likely defensive or shutdown reactions to stressors in the family. So you'll actually see a reduction of anger, acting out, yelling, smashing objects, running away, and also you'll see less isolation, withdraw, and you'll see greater connection within the family. So this is the part where the parents really want to get to decreasing these behavioral disruptions. So in summary, if we improve the autonomic regulation within a family system, there's a considerable impact on safety and stability within the family. And that improved safety and stability in the family supports increased co-regulation, improved secure attachment, and those decreased behavioral difficulties. So next week, we're going to be continuing with a deeper dive into these 4 steps for intergenerational resilience, and we'll move into looking at attachment. So thank you. And Mohammed, thank you for joining. He says, good topic and good luck. Mohammed is one of my most regular observers of the live stream, so I really appreciate you being here. And that's the end of this live stream, and I hope you have a beautiful day.